everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Forbes CEO Luncheon, the first one that we're hosting. In a city where more than 1 in 4 Bostonians is an immigrant, we are here today to celebrate the city of Boston as an inclusive and welcoming city, and on valuing and taking pride in its immigrant contribution. First, let me thank the mayor for his leadership on behalf of all Boston residents, specifically on your commitment to the immigrant community. You have publicly and passionately defended policies that include immigrants. To the Moya staff, I thank you for the work you do day in and day out on behalf of our diverse communities across the city. Our team has assisted over 1,000 eligible applicants to complete their naturalization applications, and our immigration clinics have served over 2,500 people. I'd also like to say a special thank you to our Chief of Economic Development, John Barrows, who is with us here today as well, and for all the great work that he does and his team does on behalf of the immigrant community. Our special event, the We Are Boston Gala, will be held here at the Westin Waterfront on Thursday, November 30th. This will be a special evening to celebrate our diverse cultures and highlight the contributions immigrants and children of immigrants make to this city. We hope you will join us at the gala as we pay tribute to the Caribbean. Our guests will experience the island's authenticity through music, dance, and cuisine.
At Moyer, we are more committed than ever to make sure that our immigrant neighbors, friends, families, colleagues in this city know that they belong, that they are part of the fabric of our city, and that our mayor has their back. Immigrants play an increasingly large role in our country's economic growth. According to Forbes magazine, more than 10% of the Forbes 400 list in 2016 are immigrants. In addition, the Forbes 400 also included 57 people who are the children of immigrants. They represented a variety of business sectors such as technology, finance, investment, and media entertainment. A special thank you to our sponsor, Log Me In, and the Craft Group for co-hosting this event. Thank you to the Western Waterfront for partnering with us on this event and our gala. Lastly, thank you to Forbes magazine for collaborating with our office. Now, please allow me to invite our moderator, who will lead our discussion. Please welcome the executive editor of the Boston Business Journal, Doug Banks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alejandra. Thank you to the mayor's office. Thank you, everybody, for having me here, for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to the conversations that are to follow, so I'm going to make myself comfortable right here, and we're going to get started. The Business Journal, on the topic of immigration, this is a perfect topic for us in many ways for me to be here, because this is a topic that we've editorialized about, we've covered. We focus, obviously, on the local business community, and there's nothing more local than our immigrant community here, entrepreneurship, business growth, and the economy. So we are going to talk about all of those things today, and I would just like to share a couple of facts with you before we get started and I introduce our speakers. So here are some facts. 1, 42% of America's top cancer researchers are immigrants. High-skilled visas have funded more than 70,000 scholarships for U.S. students in STEM fields. 70% or more of graduate students in key technology fields are international students. More than half of America's billion-dollar startups had an immigrant founder. That's staggering information, and so now, with that and with more to come, let's get started. First, I'd like to introduce the senior editor at Forbes. Forbes has been synonymous with success, good business, innovation, and integrity. Beyond their renowned must-know lists like 30 Under 30, richest people, most powerful women, biggest companies, Forbes magazine maintains a unique voice in its national coverage of global business stories. Steve Bertoni is the senior editor at Forbes magazine. He hosts Forbes' flagship podcast, The Forbes Interview. Mr. Bertoni regularly appears on national TV, including CNBC, CNN, and MSNBC, and today to discuss tech business and the news of the day. The city of Boston, under Mayor's... Come on up, Steve. You're welcome to come on up. We'll get you started. Everybody.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. The City of Boston, under Mayor Walsh's leadership and in partnership with local funding communities, has created the Greater Boston Immigrant Defense Fund. It's a privately funded program to increase legal representation for our low-income residents and to build capacity for community education. The The City of Boston has also been embarking on a public art campaign to celebrate and humanize immigrant contributions. And in June, the mayor hosted the first Regional Municipal Leaders for Immigrant Advancement Summit to share best practices on building trust for families of all kinds. For his work on issues affecting immigrants, Mayor Walsh was honored in March at Unidos US, the largest national Hispanic civil rights and advocacy organization in the United States. Please give a warm welcome to both Steve Bertoni and to the Mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh.
Thanks,
Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, sir.
Steve, one more time. We're going to get started.
Lots of handshakes.
All right, here we go. And be ready, folks, because we will have some audience Q&A and some audience participation opportunities as well. But first, I'd like to, we'll begin with Mayor Walsh. I just want to ask, how's the City of Boston been able to engage the business community when it comes to immigration? I gave you some statistics on how important immigration is. When it comes to your office's work with the business community here, how's the city been able to engage with the business community? Where are you seeing the most response from businesses?
There's a whole bunch of different areas, but I think one of the ones that we have is we have a gala coming up. We have Boston Gala, and we have some real big names as far as businesses that sponsor that event and also come to that event. And this is a gala that prior to 2015, 17, we were raising money to support the office. In 2000 and with the new administration in Washington, we're getting more and more support. So it supports our immigrants. It supports our immigrants through our Office of Immigrant Advancement, through doing clinics for citizenship and a whole bunch of other things. With the Immigrant Defense Fund, Alejandra, myself, I made a bunch of calls. I think we made 15 calls in one day and 15 yeses. The community is very engaged. I think with the concerns of DACA, we'll talk about that in a little bit. You know, a lot of employers in Boston have a lot of DACA young people working for their companies, and the impacts of DACA on their company is incredible. So there's a lot of interaction between the business community and the City of Boston.
What are some things? And then we're going to come to Steve next, but one more question. What are some of the things that Boston's doing that other cities and states can implement to attract global talent? We're going to see a lot of folks coming in with the Forbes 30 under 30 over the next, there's going to be sort of a national spotlight in many ways on this topic of entrepreneurship, et cetera. What are some of the things that Boston's doing that you're hearing from perhaps other mayors or seeing other cities that are doing that to attract global talent and to really take advantage of that immigrant community?
One is the Forbes Under 30. This is the second year now that we're hosting Forbes Under 30 in Boston, and having this conversation happening right now in particular is one of the ways that we continue to advance our city. And I think that, you know, what other cities can do is, I mean, when the executive order came down from Washington, the first one, which was the undocumented immigrants and all about sanctuary city business, and then the later that day when the Muslim ban came down, we sat down, we brought in universities into City Hall to talk about the impacts that they would have on the universities. Universities were concerned about because people were on their break and they were concerned about not being able to get back in the country. We sat down with hospitals. We had the hospital CEOs come in, health centers, and they were concerned about the medical students not being able to come in the country. As you mentioned, the facts that you just talked about, I think 44% of the folks. But not only that, just the impact that it would have on medicine and science. And then what was interesting, a few days later, I brought in some tech companies, you know, some of the big ones, the smaller ones, mid-sized ones. And what they were saying to us is that, what they were saying to me was that, you know, we will keep Boston as our global headquarters, if you will. But we probably, at some point, might be forced to open up our offices in Canada, where the immigration laws will be different. So when you think about the impacts that immigration has on cities, all cities in America, not just Boston, it's devastating potentially. If Washington follows through on half of what they have to do, so it's crucially important that we send positive information and positive messages to the immigrant community to let them know that we are a welcoming city. Even though we're in very interesting times in the United States of America right now when it comes to immigration, We are a welcoming city. We are an open city. We want you to come here, and we want you to continue to come here. I think that's important. And having more and more lunches like this that reinforces that. As I look out the room, I mean, we have the hospitals here. We have the life insurance companies here. We have legal services here. We have the press here. I mean, all of this is so important that we continue to pass along a message of openness and an open dialogue. Because that's the future of our city. We're a city built by immigrants. 28% of the people that live in the city of Boston, we have about 680,000 people. 28% of them are foreign born that live in Boston. 48% of the people that live in Boston are first generation like me. So 75%, a little more than 75% of the people in Boston are one plane ride or one boat ride away from being an immigrant. When you think about that, and it's pretty, those are big numbers. And when people talk about what's happening in the country, I mean, I would argue with one of the hottest cities in America, we have $7 billion worth of development. We have 60,000 new jobs in our city the last 4 years, 30,000 new people in our city. We have, you know, companies moving in here, companies interested moving in here, and we are an immigrant city. Can't be that bad.
Well, as someone who runs a newsroom who's trying to keep up with all that economic activity, I can assure you that you're absolutely right. Boston is one of the hottest cities in the country. So, all right, Steve, we talked a little bit about the impact of immigrants on a municipality and in our community, but there's a lot of business people in the room, and I want to talk a little bit about immigrants and the fact that they're more likely to be entrepreneurs than native-born Americans. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing from the national level, and then maybe what it feels like to actually have to answer questions instead of actually being the one to get to.
Yeah, I'm usually the moderator here, so if I get in trouble, I'm going to turn it on to you guys. Yeah, first of all, I mean, we're so excited to partner with the mayor and the city of Boston, the state of Massachusetts for the under 30. Starting Sunday, we're going to bring in 7,000 people here. And of those under 30 list members, 20% of them are either immigrants or firstborn. So, you know, Forbes is known for these billionaires, these kind of lottery winners, older people. Lottery winners mean they worked hard, but they're really lucky. But this new group, that is going to run this country for the next 50 years, 20% of them are either firstborn generation Americans or immigrants. And, you know, we're lucky that every year a lot of cities, don't worry, call us saying, hey, bring the under 30 to our city.
They're not us. I'm not worried.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's fine. Not worried at all. But, you know, Boston is such, you know, we want to pick a city that's a millennial city like Boston, that's international, that's growing. You know, 250,000 students come here every year. And of these 7,000 students, these kind of young leaders, so many of them are coming back to Boston because they came from your schools, or their first jobs came from the startups here. So it's great to be back. So that wasn't even your question. But on the national level, it's amazing. So of the Forbes 400, the richest, mostly entrepreneurs in the country, 10% of them are immigrants, which is shocking. It's such a big deal for us that last year we made the whole theme of the 400 about these immigrants that came in and have, you know, I think there's like $250 billion of personal wealth. That's just in their bank account. That's not to mention economies, and not to mention, you know, the jobs they create. So it's such an important thing, and, you know, we put it on the cover because we also had this gentleman on the cover as well. So it's interesting that this has become on the forefront, you know, to celebrate.
So you had two covers. You had the cover wrap.
Yes, we got them all. Yeah, we have a couple.
And for the issue to do the wrap was the right one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it all works. There's a few more in there. You're on the 5th cover. We'll get that later. But, you know, immigration is, I mean, they're coming here because they want to be here. Like, they're risking, they're leaving their loved ones, they're leaving their home to take a shot in America. And that infuses a spirit. And it might be a billionaire company, or it might be a local, you know, small business. And that is injecting new ideas, is injecting an energy, and kind of keeps everyone going, keeps this country innovating and keeping it, you know, really alive. And it's nice to live in a country where people are trying to sneak in opposed to sneaking out. And that's an important thing.
So I know we at the Business Journal cover a lot of fast growth companies, a lot of technology, life sciences, but not all entrepreneurs are focused on technology and life sciences. There's actually a significant number of less tech-intensive companies. Yeah. Forbes covers all types of companies. Talk a little bit about, and the mayor, I'd love to have you talk about as well, what are some of the things that you're seeing in terms of not necessarily less tech-intensive companies and the immigrant communities that are sort of finding them, building up companies? Do you have any examples of stories you've written or things that you've seen in your role as sort of really some success stories around non-tech? We talk a lot about tech in Boston, but I'm just curious what what you're seeing and maybe what we'll see this week. And yeah. Mr. Mayor, we talked a little bit about some of the neighborhoods of Boston and the unemployment rate that we've seen coming up that would probably fit into this category.
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot about tech because, you know, technology is something you can start with no capital and grow it huge. So we kind of celebrate those Google guys, and, you know, Elon Musk is an immigrant, but he's going into space, so that's a lot of capital.
We're all immigrants in space.
But one great example, yeah, exactly, right? All of it. One example is he's actually coming to Boston on Monday, but Adam Newman, who's the founder of WeWork, which is you're very familiar with, is it's transforming how people work, how people live, it's changing cities. And he is Israeli, and he lived on a kibbutz, and he took that kind of social aspect, that kind of social co-living space, mixed it with like American capitalistic drive, and created WeWork. And you know, an American is probably not going to do that. It takes someone who took his childhood in this interesting experiment and brought it over. Now they have a $20 billion company. That's just one great example of outside thinking and kind of meshing an old world with the new.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for Boston, when you think about the different sectors, our success has not been focused in putting all our eggs in one basket. Our focus has been really on seeing success of older companies. And, you know, you look at companies like, you know, Wayfair that's in our city now. You look at companies like, I know they're not necessarily immigrant companies, but Reebok wanting to move into Boston, ASIC wanting to move into Boston. All of those companies, the insurance companies, when I ran for mayor, we were having a deep conversation about talking about attracting new companies to Boston. And what we made sure that was part of the conversation is, as we were talking about that, not to upset the companies that have been here for 100 plus years. Because when times get bad, those are the companies that have withstood the test of time. So I think we have to continue that mix. When it comes to immigrants, a lot of immigrants, our small business community in Boston is loaded with immigrants. You know, so when we think about, when we created the Office of Economic Development, which is led by John Barros, who's here with us today, you know, really focusing on small businesses. And we moved the Main Street program from what was in Department of Neighborhood Development over to Economic Development, because we just saw the number of small businesses in the city that were popping up. If you take that's our largest employer in the city of Boston, our small businesses. And so you put them all together, they're bigger than anybody we have. So it's important for us to remember that and continue to diversify businesses, encourage people. When we did the bowling building over in Dorchester, you know, we talked about WeWork, and we have Mass Challenge. We created another incubator type of space in the bowling building because of Roxbury, making sure that as we were thinking about this innovative economy, we want to tap into the kids of color, particularly African American kids and a lot of Cape Verdean kids that are around the bowling building. How do we make sure they have places to go?
Yeah, Dudley Squares, you could see the transformation taking place in that neighborhood as a result of all of the activity that's going on there.
But we want to make sure that transformation that happens, we want to make sure the kids that live there, as the transformation happens, as new people come in there, we want to make sure they can stay.
That they're a part of it.
Because in other parts of America, including Boston, you know, the poorer community, particularly the communities of color, have been pushed out of the neighborhood. And so they've been through the difficulties of a city, but then they haven't necessarily been able to benefit from the positives of a city and growth. We want to try and change that in Boston to allow people to be part of the growth and help build wealth.
Well, I think it was John's department, in the past year, you came out with a whole small business report that was largely focused on solving the problems of immigrant founders and entrepreneurs, right? I mean, you really taken that approach to helping small business and partnering small business through the lens of, I think, entrepreneurship and immigration. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Like Steve said, you know, people aren't afraid to try and sneak into the United States of America. And just like that, they also, because of who they are and what they've come from, they're not afraid to make investments and just put everything on the line and try and start a business and grow a business and take that jump where other people might be a little hesitant. And I think that's the uniqueness of an immigrant. They're not afraid. They don't think of failing necessarily. It's like they go in this business to succeed, and they're not afraid to take that jump.
Just getting here is success.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned DACA. I want to bring that up just because the president's giving Congress 6 months to come up with a solution to his repeal of DACA. I think everybody here knows the numbers, 800,000 DACA recipients nationwide. There are 7,000 here in Massachusetts. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about what your office in Boston is doing to help the dreamers, the kids who are here because their parents, came in illegally, but they were born here. So, what are you doing to help the Dreamers? And then, Steve, I'd love to hear from you what you're seeing, what you guys are looking at in terms of some of the companies nationally, what they're doing, the people that you're writing about, what they're doing for their workers. But Mr. Mayor?
I mean, I think we're trying to make people feel comfortable. There's not a lot, though, unfortunately, at this point that we can do. I mean, we're training people on how to become citizens. I think out of this move by the president, you might see a pathway to citizenship for some folks, and if there is, we're training people on how to become citizens and telling them what they have to learn and the paperwork they have to fill out, and we're doing that every single day. We really have to, I think, mayors around America have to get together and put pressure on Congress and the Senate, similar to what we did with the Affordable Care Act. And people that didn't see that necessarily on the forefront, but a lot of us mayors, both Republicans and Democrats behind the scenes, are working to make sure that the Affordable Care Act was protected because of the impacts it would have on the economies of cities and towns all across America. I think the same will be said and has to be done by mayors across America to rally around together to talk about the importance of the DACA program and the importance of what DACA means. I mean, I think Massachusetts, we talked about 7,000 participants, $550 million of GDP. So that's a lot of money in Massachusetts, and that'll turn a lot of cities and towns upside down. It might not long-term turn Boston upside down, but when you're talking about cities and towns that are so dependent upon folks that are in important jobs in smaller cities and towns. So I think ultimately, what can I do? Hope to let people know we're here for you. But long-term, I think, in the long-term meaning in the next couple of months, is really work with the other mayors across America and really put pressure on Congress to act. I think what will happen is I don't think they'll act, and I think they'll extend the program again for another 6 months. And I'm not sure what the rationale behind the president was to do what he did, because he really didn't take any action. He kind of put it back on the heels of the Congress. I think what he should have done is come up with an immigration reform bill, maybe file it in the United States Senate and the Congress, and let them figure out how to deal with immigration in the country.
Okay.
And it's fascinating to see, with the mayors of this country, they're, if you want something done, ask a mayor. You got to make sure everything's functioning, and whether it's immigration or climate change or you name it, it's very interesting seeing how they're keeping this country together when federal administration kind of shakes it up. It's you guys, holding it together. On the business side, it's great to see, whether it's Tim Cook or Mark Zuckerberg, all these people come out with talking against this DECA thing and really putting it in the forefront. And I don't know what they can do. I mean, they're using their platform, they're using their power as leaders and a lot of people as role models to maybe share their side of the story and kind of push this forward. But like you said, he just kind of put it on the back burner again and just kicked it down the road.
But it's going to have to be mass. I mean, companies can, some companies can have the ability to move their services to another place where immigration is lax. Oh, not lax, I shouldn't say lax. Immigration is more accepted, like Canada. But honestly, mayors have to look and say, when I had that meeting, I talked about the meeting with the CEOs and the business people. That concerned me because I'm thinking to myself, I take pride in building up our population. I take pride in adding jobs to the economy. I know traffic is a problem, but not that I take pride in traffic, but I take pride in traffic because I'm like, okay, we're doing well.
Well, if we solve the T, the traffic will be a lot better. But that's a whole different conversation.
It's a whole different conversation for a different day.
After lunch, we'll talk about it.
But I will say this. I mean, I think that as a mayor, you get concerned about what these continually tax mean on our immigrant population, because at some point somebody's not going to want to sneak into the United States of America. They're going to say, okay, let's try someplace else that's more open, or maybe we should try, see if we can make Europe work, in a different way. And I do get concerned about that. And when I talk to my fellow mayors from around America, we all feel the same way, because we're all kind of fighting and competing with each other. There's a little bit of a competition going on here. And it's kind of like, what's next? I mean, I won hard after Fios because when I was running for mayor, Kansas City was getting fiber optic cable laid around the city of Boston. We won hard after some of these companies that have come into our city because I didn't want them to go to New York. We're going to go hard after another little company coming up here, and hopefully, if we get them, we get them. If we don't, we don't. But we're not going to we're not going to leave anything on the table and not move forward. And I think that having the talent pool here in Boston, you know, Babson College created a special program for immigrants. UMass Boston has the in-state tuition bill, in-state tuition for immigrants. Those are two programs that are trying to attract talent here. If the talent can't come in, we're not going to attract it here.
Yeah, and the schools are such a great magnet for that talent.
It's huge. I mean, you go to all the schools, and another investment being made. A lot of the schools, Harvard, BU, the other day, a lot of the investments that are building buildings and science buildings, they're made by students that are foreign students that came here to learn, and then they're investing hundreds of millions of dollars into building new buildings, and they're not looking for anything other than maybe the name on the side of the building. You can't lose that, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. That immigrants who have come here and got educated have also made huge investments in the American, in America infrastructure to help move us forward.
And I can't believe you brought up another a very important institution here, the first place Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
And he's a New Yorker.
Well,
Right?
they have first place, 3 games. I'm glad
Yeah,
I'm glad the Yankees and Red Sox keep losing. So one of them's going to make first place.
But guys like, you know, Big Pop, the roster is incredible.
Yeah, Big Papi, Pedro won us the World Series in 2004, and even now, I mean, you think about sports, and you know, there's a lot of conflict about, you know, taking a knee and not taking a knee. But when you look at our sports, and whether it's hockey, basketball, football, baseball, it's international. Our basketball NBA is getting more and more international. Our hockey obviously has been international for a long time.
You Canadians.
And there's other countries that are being involved in this, in these conversations. You know, football obviously international too as well.
Not to mention soccer. You got the New England Revolution.
Soccer in Boston, in Massachusetts, in America is getting bigger in the next 10, 15, 20 years. Soccer is going to be a whole different sport here.
We still need a stadium in Boston. We got to work on that, John.
Working
right?
it.
Okay.
Working it.
I'll be your first season ticket holder if you get it closer. I just can't get down to Gillette.
I'm hoping to get one nice and close here. We'll see.
All right, let's work on that. So I want to make sure that we have audience participation. I do have another question related to Canada because you keep bringing it up, but I'm going to let some folks in the room ask these two guys a question if you have one. We have a mic that's ready to go. Okay, yep.
My name is Sushil Tuli, and I'm a perfect example of immigrant being successful in this country. I started as a teller and ultimately opened a bank, and now I run a bank in Boston and surrounding communities. But one of the things you talked about, Babson and other places having students there. So we used to go and recruit employees from various universities who has come to get the education. This is the first year what we are seeing is they don't have a confidence to stay here. So when we go and talk to them, they say, oh no, after I graduate, I'm going to go back to my country. That was not the case before. Before they will say, okay, somebody filed our H-1 visa and we are willing to stay here. How do you recommend that we build that confidence in those people that they would want to have somebody sponsor them and they want to stay here?
So this is the question I was going to ask you, which is exactly right. So this is what businesses are hearing. People that they're recruiting are saying, I don't even know if I should try to stay here because I may end up having to go to Canada. What do you tell them? What can businesses tell them?
I think what we have to do is continue to pass positive messages about our city being an open, inclusive city, and I'm going to continue to do that. You know, it's important. When I first got elected mayor, I was at HBS. I went to a meeting. Dan Coe, my chief of staff, former chief of staff, was with me. And afterwards, I asked, what percentage of HBS graduates every year stay in Boston and stay in Massachusetts? I think it was like 5%. And I'm thinking, we're losing 95% of the talent, best talent in the world, or some of the best talent in the world, coming to Cambridge, which is next door. Actually, it's in Boston, HBS, and losing them. I'm like, what do we do to recruit more and keep more people here? The same is said for immigrants. And why would we let this talent go? And that's what I can't quite figure out, what Washington is missing here. That we have the best and brightest that come to our schools. Many of them come to Wentworth, right next door to you, the President Wentworth. I mean, we're losing these talented engineers and architects to other places. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. So what we have to do is continue to enforce that we are an open and welcoming city in Boston, and we want you to stay here.
Okay, next question. Quincy.
Hi, good morning. So, you know, happening real time, we just heard about across the U.S., and I think 50 here, the ICE activity and arrests and seizures that have taken place. And the news is reporting, or some of the news is reported already, more than half that number had no criminal record, and of the ones that did have a criminal record, it was mainly driven by DUI. Yeah. One of the things our young people are dealing with, and immigrants in general, are the fear of being sent back to their countries. And I'm just wondering, you know, DACA was the sort of first wave of this, and then you heard, okay, but it may be a few more months. But with this most recent event that happened just, I guess, last night, you know, what do we do here? How do we help to shore up the confidence in the young people that are, you know, fearful, whether they're, you know, third graders or they're 30 years old? I'm just interested in your perspective.
Yeah, we're trying to confirm right now if actually 20 of the 50, if they were arrested for just being here, and we haven't confirmed that yet, because the first reports were everyone had a felony, and the person that was grabbed in Boston was a person, I believe, didn't register as a sex offender, which is a crime, and obviously got arrested. So we haven't confirmed that. But in saying that, it's going to get, if the federal government continues, or starts to do raids, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard because people are going to go underground. You know, we have health centers that a lot of our undocumented immigrants will go and get treatment for. They're going to stop going to health centers. They're going to stop going to churches. They're going to stop going to stop sending their kids to school. I visit a couple schools a week in Boston, minus the high schools. Meaning I visit the high school, but I'm not talking about high schools. Every single time I go into a school, and every time I've gone to a school for the last year, a young child has grabbed me and talked to me about something to the effect of, will you protect my family? So they're learning under these circumstances. So they're hearing it at home, because they're not just making it up, they're hearing it at home. So it's pretty scary what's going on out there. And I think, you know, Alejandra and her team has done a great amount of work to raise awareness. We do these clinics at the public libraries. Commissioner Evans coming out and saying that we will not be part of any type of ICE raids, and very clear on the fact that we are a city of immigrants and that we support immigrants. Anytime that we hear a rumor that you know, somebody in the police department or somebody is helping give information, we look right into it right away to make sure it's not accurate. So we're in tricky times right now. Up until this point, it's all been threats and hearsay. Now we're starting to see a little more activity. You know, so we have to just keep an eye on it. I don't have a good answer for you other than that. I mean, I'd like, you know, I can get in front of a camera and go after the White House and U.S. Attorney and all that all day long, but unfortunately, I don't have that power. I would just want to make sure, and I'm staying in close contact with the governor, that, you know, the state does not get involved in this. The National Guard does not get involved in this. I would ask them to make sure that does not happen on a statewide level.
Thank you. Yep. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you, and thanks for having this. And this is a question both for the mayor as well as for Steve. I think Amazon's move to pit the cities against each other and have them compete for their business is wonderful. Do you think that our immigrant status is going to help? And Steve, I think in particular, it'll be good to get your perspective across the nation to get a sense of what you see from the other cities. I think Boston has been talked about as really one of the forerunners for this, this move for Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing I want to say is that I don't think the immigration issue even is a consideration for Amazon in this. It doesn't matter. By the time that Amazon chooses a city in America, by the time they actually start to build their first building, this show down in Washington will be over. We will have switched the page and gone on to somebody new. So I can't imagine the next person coming in, whoever that is, Democrat or Republican, operating in the same light as this White House. So I am less concerned about that, because I think Amazon is here for the long game. And the long game is going to be about immigration and visas and immigration reform and all that stuff. So I'm not necessarily concerned about Amazon in that case.
Yeah, and just in terms of, when we were looking for cities, the fact that GE was joining, that you guys won the bid, they put their corporate headquarters here, that's such a great signal that something's happening here. And companies, technology and engineering touches every business these days. And I think people are fighting to be close to the universities here, especially I think MIT and Harvard for the high tech. It's been a great drawer because they want to be where this new talent is, and they're going to set up shop right here. I'm sure if Amazon even doesn't put their second headquarters here, you see whether it's Microsoft or Facebook or Google and IBM, they're all putting giant headquarters here because they need to be close to this. It's a growing city. It's a great lifestyle for people, and they want to be near the talent, and that's the universities. So that is such a huge thing. I mean, no other town has that kind of education system. And if you're looking to recruit young, smart talent, I think they're picking Boston for sure.
Yeah, and to his question, the idea that we have such a robust talent pipeline here, and such a strong immigrant community that's coming through, with all the statistics that we've shared and we've talked about, it definitely helps Boston, I think, to have that.
We also have people like Roger Crandall, who is promoting our city every single day around the country, and I think that helps, and other business leaders that have been here for a long time. And I think that that's helping us as well, because we've always had the school and education, we've always had the talent pool, but now it's like we're actually going a little further. I know when our hospital presidents are going around different places, they're talking about Boston in a different light, and I think all of that's helping. And I think that that's something that's, you have a lot more tech companies. Dave Fialco, we jokingly talked about. Dave Fialco put a dinner together with Steve to talk about, we're trying to get an article in Forbes magazine about Boston. That's what was my intention of going to this dinner we had 3 years ago.
I thought it was for my conversation.
It was your conversation. I want to get it straight because I'm thinking about promoting Boston. Next thing you know, we're in the running for the Forbes 30 under 30 because some changes happened in another city, and so all of a sudden now if David didn't put that dinner together, you're probably not in Boston, and I think that that's also, it's the marketing piece of how business leaders have been talking about us in a whole different light. So it's all of us kind of working together to promote a city. So I think that's the uniqueness of our city.
Yeah, and real quick, obviously I mentioned people, the businesses want to be near the talent, the universities, but also you want to set up a headquarters where your employees and your best people already with the company want to live. Yeah. And not to name names, but you hear companies move in places for tax benefits, but no one wants to pick up and move to that area of the country. I think Boston is an attractive place. No matter where you are, the move it's a great lifestyle.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to put the pause button on here. I just want to, if you have any final sort of parting words before we take a short break for lunch, any last statements?
Thank everyone here today for coming out for this lunch. And this is an exciting week in Boston. Last year, it was just amazing watching all these people come from all over the world to Boston, kind of just floating around and being, if you get a chance to kind of take part in any of the events, take part in something, because it's incredible watching all this young talent. These are the leaders of the future that are going to be in our city over the next few days, and it's exciting to have them here. So, and I want to thank Forbes for the honor of hosting the conference here.
No, yeah, thank you for honor to be here with everybody. And yes, if you want to check out what we're doing starting on Sunday night with a big concert and great content Monday and Tuesday, grab me afterwards and I'll hook you up. So it should be a good event.
Will you join me in thanking the Mayor Walsh and Steve Bertoni? Thank you very much for your time, guys. We're going to take a short break, let you guys have some food. We'll be back in about 15 minutes.